Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to shine a massive spotlight on a hidden enemy, one that plagues modern knowledge workers, gamers, and honestly, pretty much anyone who spends hours focused on a screen. We are talking about the invisible brain drain, cognitive fatigue. It's stealthy, it's incredibly dangerous to our productivity, and it actually works completely differently than physical exhaustion. So get ready to entirely rethink how you work, rest, and recharge.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this scenario for a second. You've been sitting at your desk all day long. You haven't exactly run a marathon, you haven't been lifting heavy weights, but as you finally leave the office, you feel this profound sense of exhaustion. You walk up to a vending machine, completely intending to grab a water, but somehow your finger slips and you press the button for a sugary soda instead. You just made a really silly, uncharacteristic mistake. Why? Well, your body isn't tired, but your brain is completely drained.
This exact phenomenon has a name: cognitive fatigue. It's basically a decline in your judgment and decision-making capabilities that happens without an immediate feeling of physical exhaustion. This concept was deeply explored by Dr. Takashi Matsui, a sports neuroscience researcher over at the University of Tsukuba. And interestingly enough, Dr. Matsui actually first noticed this during his competitive judo matches. He realized that the immense mental pressure and the sheer anticipation before a match was actively impairing his split-second decision-making once the match actually began.
To really wrap our heads around this, it helps to contrast it with physical fatigue. Because when your muscles are tired, the feeling is immediate, right? It's obvious. Your legs feel incredibly heavy. You literally cannot run another step. You know for a fact you need to rest. But cognitive fatigue, or brain tiredness, is this invisible, creeping threat. It sneaks up on us while we're just sitting in our chairs, quietly deteriorating our performance without ever giving us an immediate, obvious warning sign.
Let's move on to Section 1, the motive, or as we like to call it, the biological break.
To understand how to actually beat this hidden enemy, we got to look under the hood and investigate the motive. What actually happens inside our brains when we're working hard at our desks? Well, just like your moving muscles, your brain needs fuel. When you're thinking hard, making tough decisions, or playing a highly strategic game, your brain cells consume stored carbohydrates called glycogen. Now, as this glycogen is broken down for energy, the process produces lactic acid. For decades, lactic acid was misunderstood as just a useless waste product that caused muscle soreness. But modern science tells us it's actually incredibly important. As it builds up, it triggers specific receptors on the synapses of your nerve cells.
So, the crucial point is this. Lactic acid isn't just waste at all. It acts as a biological brake. Dr. Matsui explains that this is actually a protective mechanism. Think about it. If your nerve cells completely run out of glycogen, they die. And nerve cells don't easily regenerate. So the lactic acid builds up to suppress neural activity, essentially forcing your brain to slow down to prevent irreversible cell death. It's a built-in evolutionary defense mechanism.
Which brings us to Section 2, the dangerous delay.
And here is where we run into a major problem in the modern world. There's this terrifying lag between when our brains apply that brake and when we finally realize that we're tired. To measure this, Dr. Matsui set up a really fascinating 3-hour esports soccer experiment. He had participants play a highly strategic soccer video game for 3 continuous hours. At hour 0, their brain activity peaked. But get this, between hours 1 and 2, their cognitive judgment significantly dropped. However, they didn't actually feel tired yet. It wasn't until a full 3 hours had passed that their subjective feeling of fatigue finally spiked.
And this brilliantly illustrates what Dr. Matsui calls a literal human bug. Take a look at how at hour 2, judgment speed was already dropping, yet the player's subjective feeling of fatigue remained completely normal. They thought they were totally fine. It isn't until hour 3 that the brain finally sends the signal, hey, I'm exhausted down here. So by the time you actually feel tired during intense desk work, your performance has already been compromised for hours.
All right, let's look at Section 3, surprising warning signs.
So, if we literally can't trust our own feelings of tiredness, how on earth do we spot this invisible fatigue before it ruins our judgment? It's time for some physiological detective work. Believe it or not, one of the absolutely biggest red flags for mental exhaustion is a temperature drop. Specifically, a shocking 2 degrees Celsius drop in the surface temperature of your extremities.
Our bodies leave behind these weird physical clues when our brains are tired. During intense brain focus, the nervous system constricts your blood vessels, and because you aren't moving your muscles to generate heat, this constriction causes your fingertips and even your nose to become surprisingly cold, dropping by about 2 degrees. On top of that, researchers found that after 2 hours of cognitive strain, a person's pupils physically shrink by an average of 0.12 millimeters. Your eyes and your nose are literally giving away your brain's exhaustion.
Now for the good stuff. Section 4, the antidotes.
Let's move to JAMA and see how this builds into an actionable strategy. Now that we know exactly how to detect the problem, how do we fight back? Well, we have some incredibly unconventional, science-backed solutions to share. First up is the 1-minute brain reboot. This is a highly specific micro-workout designed to spike your heart rate to around 150 beats per minute, which successfully restores cognitive performance before a big task, and it takes exactly 61 seconds. You do 7 seconds of an all-out high knees dash, followed by 20 seconds of rest. You repeat that work and rest cycle 3 times. That's it, the whole shebang in a minute. Doing this right before a major meeting or esports match actively prevents cognitive drop-off and boosts teamwork.
Next up is your morning nutrition. Now, you might think a sugary fruit juice is a great, quick energy source for the brain, but experiments showed that participants who drank a protein drink in the morning maintained significantly higher cognitive performance and judgment over a 3-hour gaming session compared to those who just drank sweet apple juice. Turns out, protein isn't just for building muscle. It provides sustained, immediate benefits for your brain's processing power.
But what about when you're right in the thick of it? What is the ultimate drink for brain fatigue while you're sitting at your desk? Now, we all tend to reach for coffee or those flashy energy drinks, but relying daily on heavy caffeine or sugar just leads to tolerance buildup, sleep disruption, and nasty inevitable sugar crashes. So what's the healthy, sustainable alternative?
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sensory science behind the ultimate brain beverage, unsweetened carbonated water. Yep, sparkling water. When you drink it, the carbonation actually triggers both the cold and hot TRP channels, basically your temperature and pain receptors in your throat simultaneously. It's like this dual sensory hit that sends strong signals right up through your brainstem to your prefrontal cortex, and that is the exact part of the brain that governs judgment and decision-making.
During that 3-hour esports experiment we talked about, participants who sipped unsweetened sparkling water instead of plain water saw incredible benefits. The sparkling water effect successfully maintained their judgment speed, completely prevented their subjective feeling of fatigue from spiking, and it did all of that safely without a sugar crash or building caffeine tolerance. It is quite literally a biological hack for your brain's alertness.
And that leads us into our final section, Section 5, the power of Kizuna.
Finally, we arrive at the most surprisingly human element of combating brain drain in the modern workplace. It turns out it isn't just about what you drink or how you exercise, it's about who is sitting right next to you. Kizuna is the Japanese concept of bonding, sharing an experience, and building interpersonal connections. Research shows that sharing a task or simply enjoying a shared experience fundamentally alters our perception of fatigue. In fact, studies show that when you look at a steep hill while standing next to a close friend, the angle of the hill literally looks less steep to your brain. Bonding over a task actively prevents that subjective feeling of exhaustion.
Which brings us to our final thought. We know carbonation stimulates the brain. We know sharing an experience physically reduces perceived fatigue. So could something as simple as saying cheers and sharing an unsweetened sparkling water with a coworker be your ultimate productivity hack? By combining the neurological boost of carbonation with the psychological power of human bonding, you might just banish cognitive fatigue for good. Honestly, try it out during your next incredibly long afternoon meeting and see just how much sharper you feel.